The holographic projection of the Galactic Emperor flickered to life, his imposing figure casting an ominous glow across the conference room of the Imperial governors. Flanked by his elite guard, the Emperor's booming voice reverberated through the chamber. Governors, the time has come to end Earth's defiance of our rightful authority. For too long, that insignificant blue planet has spurned our generous offers to join the Galactic Empire. No more. He paused, his harsh gaze sweeping across the room. Effective immediately, I am issuing the decree. All travel and communication between the Empire and the planet Earth is hereby forbidden. Any violation of this edict will be considered an act of treason, punishable by the harshest of consequences. The governors exchanged uneasy glances, the air thick with tension. Governor Greya, an ambitious Tiberian known for his ruthless tactics, was the first to speak up. But, Your Majesty, Earth represents an invaluable market for our goods and resources. Cutting off all contact would be economically disastrous. The Emperor's eyes narrowed to slits. I am well aware of the financial implications, Governor. However, Earth's stubbornness has grown tiresome. This decree will stand. He raised a hand, silencing the protests. You have your orders. See to it that they are carried out, or face the consequences yourselves. With that, the hologram winked out, leaving the governors in stunned silence. Greya slammed his fist on the table, his scales rippling in barely contained fury. This is an outrage. The Emperor has gone mad. We cannot allow this to stand. Governor Vaxon, a calculating Oran, raised a placating hand. Calm yourself, Greya. While I share your concerns, we must tread carefully. Defying the Emperor's decree openly would be suicide. Greya leaned back in his chair, his reptilian features twisting into a scowl. Then what do you propose we do, Vaxon? Sit back and watch as our profits evaporate. Vaxon steepled his fingers, a sly smile creeping across his face. Oh, I have a few ideas. On Earth, the news of the Imperial decree spread like wildfire. Sarah Smith, a brilliant young scientist working at the Advanced Propulsion Research Center, stared at the holoscreen in her office, her brow furrowed with concern. Banned from the Empire. That's unprecedented. She replayed the Emperor's speech, analyzing his every word and gesture. Sarah had always been fascinated by the grand political machinations of the galaxy, but this latest development filled her with unease. A knock at the door drew her attention, and she turned to see her colleague, Dr. Aisha Khan, peering in. Did you see the news, Sarah? This is going to change everything. Aisha stepped into the office, her expression grave. Sarah nodded. I'm well aware. The implications are staggering. This could severely impact our research, not to mention our ability to acquire critical supplies and technology from the Empire. Aisha began pacing back and forth, her hands clasped behind her back. Exactly. And you know the governors won't just accept this without a fight. They'll try to find ways around the decree, no matter the cost. Sarah's eyes widened with realization. You think they'll try to establish covered channels, don't you? Risking open defiance of the Emperor. It's the only way they can maintain their stranglehold on the Earth market. Aisha paused, her gaze meeting Sarah's. Which means we need to be prepared. Whatever the governors have planned, we can't let them jeopardize Earth's security. Sarah nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. Then we need to warn the government, get them to start fortifying our defenses. And she hesitated, aware of the gravity of her next words. We may have to consider forming our own resistance network, one that can operate in the shadows, beyond the governor's reach. Aisha's eyes widened, but she quickly schooled her features. You realize what you're suggesting, don't you? The risks involved. I do, Sarah said, her voice steady. But if the governors are willing to defy the Emperor to maintain their profits, then we must be willing to do whatever it takes to protect our planet. She held Aisha's gaze, her expression resolute. Are you with me? Aisha took a deep breath, then squared her shoulders. Always. Let's get to work. The two scientists hurried out of the office, their minds already whirring with plans and contingencies. The battle for Earth had begun. The imperial governors gathered once more, their faces etched with a mixture of anger and apprehension. Governor Greya slammed his fist on the table, his scales rippling with barely contained fury. This is an outrage. The Emperor has doomed our prophets with this absurd decree. We cannot allow it to stand. Governor Vaxon raised a placating hand. Calm yourself, Greya. While I share your concerns, we must tread carefully. Defying the Emperor openly would be suicide. Greya leaned back in his chair, his reptilian features twisting into a scowl. Then what do you propose we do, Vaxon? Sit back and watch as our holdings crumble. Vaxon steepled his fingers, a sly smile creeping across his face. Oh, I have a few ideas. He paused, surveying the room. We may not be able to defy the Emperor directly, but that doesn't mean we can't find alternative channels to maintain our operations on Earth. The other governors leaned in, their curiosity piqued. Vaxon continued, we need to establish covert communication networks, smuggling routes, and loyal operatives on the planet, ones that can circumvent the edict without the Emperor's knowledge. Governor Tev, a shrewd Sandarian, nodded slowly. And how do you propose we do that? The security measures on Earth will be heightened, and any misstep could bring the full wrath of the Empire down upon us. Vaxon's smile widened. That's where our special assets come in. He gestured to the far end of the table, where a hooded figure sat silently. Introduce yourself, my friend. The figure lowered its hood, revealing the face of a young woman with piercing green eyes. I am Nika, and I have a proposition that may interest you all. Greya eyed the woman warily. And what makes you think you can aid us in this endeavor? Nika leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. I have access to a network of skilled operatives, smugglers, hackers, and agents who specialize in undertaking discreet missions. For the right price, of course. Vaxon nodded approvingly. Nika and her associates have proven their worth on numerous occasions. I believe she can provide us with the means to establish a covert presence on Earth, despite the Emperor's decree. Greya narrowed his eyes. And what guarantees do we have that your people won't simply betray us the moment the credits are exchanged? Nika smiled thinly. You have my word, Governor. And in our line of work, that's worth more than any contract. She paused, her expression turning serious. However, I must caution you. The risks involved in this endeavor are substantial. Failure could result in not only the loss of your profits, but your lives as well. The governors exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of their decision palpable. Finally, Vaxon spoke up. We're well aware of the risks, Nika, but the potential rewards far outweigh them. He looked around the table, meeting each governor's gaze. Are we all in agreement? One by one, the governors nodded, their faces set with grim determination. Greya was the last to acquiesce, his scales still rippling with barely contained anger. Very well, but if this plan of yours fails, Vaxon, I'll have your head. Vaxon simply smiled. It won't. In her office, Sarah pored over the latest intelligence reports, her brow furrowed with concern. Aisha stood nearby, her arms crossed over her chest. The governors are already moving to undermine the Emperor's decree, Sarah said, her voice tense. Our operatives have detected increased smuggling activity and covert communications in the border regions. Aisha nodded grimly. That's what I was afraid of. Those greedy bastards will stop at nothing to protect their profits, even if it means risking open defiance of the Empire. Sarah sighed, running a hand through her hair. And we both know they won't be the only ones willing to defy the edict. There are bound to be opportunistic individuals and groups out there who will try to exploit the situation for their own gain. Aisha's expression darkened, which means we need to be one step ahead of them. We have to start building our own network of operatives, ones loyal to Earth and its people, not the governor's schemes. Sarah nodded, her eyes resolute. Agreed. I've already reached out to some trusted contacts in the government and the scientific community. They're on board, and we're beginning to put together a plan of action. Aisha placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder, offering a rare smile. Then let's get to work. The future of our planet depends on it. The two scientists turned their attention back to the reports, their minds already whirring with contingencies and strategies. The battle for Earth had only just begun. In the dimly lit back streets of Neo-Tokyo, a clandestine meeting was underway. Figures huddled in the shadows, their faces obscured by hoods and scarves, as they listened intently to the words of their leader. The imperial decree has left us with no choice. The woman, known only as Akiko, spoke in a hushed tone. Earth is being cut off from the rest of the galaxy, and those who wish to flee must do so now, before the governors tighten their grip. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled group. Akiko raised her hand, silencing them. That is why we are forming an underground railroad, a network of safe houses, smugglers, and operatives who will spirit people away to the galactic frontier, beyond the reach of the Empire. A young man in the back, his eyes shining with a mixture of fear and determination, spoke up. But what about the risks? Surely the governors and their agents will be hunting for anyone trying to escape. Akiko nodded solemnly. The risks are considerable. That much is true. But for those who wish to live free, it is a chance worth taking, and we will do everything in our power to protect them. Another figure, a weathered old spacer, stepped forward. I've got a few contacts in the outer colonies who might be willing to lend a hand. We'll need ships, supplies, and a reliable means of transportation. Akiko smiled thinly. Already taken care of. We've been making preparations for weeks, gathering resources and planning routes. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled group. But we'll need more than ships and supplies. We need brave souls willing to risk everything to get our people to safety. A moment of silence hung in the air. Then one by one, the figures began to nod, their resolve hardening. Akiko clasped her hands together, a newfound determination in her eyes. Then let us begin. In her office at the Advanced Propulsion Research Center, Sarah pored over the latest intelligence reports, her expression grim. Aisha stood nearby, her arms crossed over her chest. The Underground Railroad is already operational, Sarah said, her voice tense. Our operatives have confirmed that several groups have successfully smuggled people off-world in the past few weeks. Aisha's brow furrowed. That's both good and bad news. On one hand, it means there's an established network to help those who wish to flee. On the other, it's only a matter of time before the governors catch wind of it. Sarah nodded, her fingers drumming on the desk. Exactly. And if the governors decide to crack down on the railroad, it could put countless lives at risk. Aisha's expression darkened. Then we need to get involved. Protect those channels of escape. We can't let the governors or their operatives shut it down. Sarah hesitated, her gaze shifting away. I've been thinking about that, Aisha, and I believe we need to take it a step further. Aisha's eyes widened. What do you mean? Sarah met her friend's gaze, her expression resolute. We need to transform the Underground Railroad into something more, a true resistance movement, one that can not only help people escape, but also fight back against the governor's schemes. Aisha's jaw tightened. You're talking about open defiance of the Empire. The risks. I know the risks, Aisha, Sarah interjected, her voice firm. But if we don't act now, the governors will tighten their grip on Earth, and we may lose our chance to ever be free. Aisha was silent for a long moment, her mind clearly wrestling with the implications. Finally, she sighed and nodded. All right, Sarah. I'm with you. What do you have in mind? Sarah's lips quirked into a determined smile. Well, for starters, I've been working on a little project that might give us an edge. As the two scientists began to map out their plan, the weight of their decision hung heavy in the air. The battle for Earth was about to take an even more dangerous turn. Admiral Terran Roche paced the bridge of his personal corvette, his brow furrowed with a mixture of anger and resignation. The news of the Emperor's decree had reached him just hours ago, and he knew his time was running short. Patch me through to Fleet Command, he barked, his voice carrying a rare edge of emotion. "I need to speak with the High Admiral immediately." The communications officer hurried to comply, and within moments, the wizened face of the High Admiral appeared on the view screen. "Admiral Roche, I assume you're calling about the Emperor's latest edict." The High Admiral's tone was clipped, his expression unreadable. Roche wasted no time. "With all due respect, sir, this decree is madness. Cutting off all contact with Earth will have disastrous consequences, both economically and strategically." The High Admiral raised a hand, silencing him. "The Emperor's decision is final, Admiral. I suggest you focus your efforts on maintaining order within your assigned sector, rather than questioning his wisdom." Roche's jaw tightened. "But, sir, there are people on Earth who wish to flee the planet, to escape the governor's stranglehold. Surely we have a duty to help them." "Absolutely not." The High Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Any attempt to violate the decree will be considered an act of treason, punishable by the harshest of consequences. I expect you to comply, Admiral, without further argument." The view screen went dark, leaving Roche alone with his thoughts. He stood there, his fists clenched, his mind racing. He knew what he had to do, even if it meant risking everything. Sarah and Aisha huddled over a holographic display, their eyes narrowed in concentration. Surrounding them were a team of scientists and technicians, all working feverishly on the project Sarah had alluded to earlier. "The modifications are nearly complete," Sarah said, her voice taut with excitement. "Once we integrate the new algorithms, the propulsion system should be able to achieve speeds that are virtually undetectable by Imperial sensors." Aisha nodded, a grim smile playing on her lips. "That'll give us a crucial advantage in our escape and evasion operations, but we'll still need a reliable means of transportation to get people off-world." Sarah's expression darkened. "That's where our special contact comes in." She turned to one of the technicians. "Have you heard back from Admiral Roche?" The technician cleared his throat. "Yes, ma'am. He's agreed to meet with us in person, but he's requested complete discretion. Apparently, he has something of great importance to discuss." Sarah and Aisha exchanged a meaningful glance. "Then let's not keep him waiting," Aisha said, her voice laced with determination. *****. Admiral Roche paced the dimly lit hangar, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He had taken a tremendous risk in reaching out to these scientists, but he knew he had no other choice. The lives of countless Earthlings depended on it. The sound of approaching footsteps drew his attention, and he turned to see Sarah and Aisha striding towards him, their expressions guarded. "Admiral Roche," Sarah said, her voice low. "Thank you for meeting with us. What is it you have to share?" Roche took a deep breath, his gaze darting around the hangar as if to ensure they were truly alone. "I'm going to help you get people off of Earth," he said, his words laden with a sense of finality. Aisha's eyes widened. "You're defying the Emperor's decree. Do you have any idea the consequences?" Roche raised a hand, cutting her off. "I'm well aware of the risks, Dr. Khan, but I cannot, in good conscience, stand by and watch as the governors exploit and oppress the people of Earth." He paused, his expression grim. "I've already arranged for a small group of Earthlings to be transported to a distant colony world, beyond the reach of the Empire." Sarah's brow furrowed. "And how do you plan to accomplish this without being detected?" Roche's lips twitched into a humorless smile. "That's where your modifications come in. I need your team to outfit my ship with the new propulsion system, one that can evade Imperial sensors. With that, I'll be able to make the necessary runs without raising any alarms." Sarah and Aisha exchanged a loaded glance, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Finally, Sarah spoke up. "We'll do it, but you understand that this is just the beginning, don't you? The fight for Earth's freedom is only just starting." Roche nodded, a glimmer of determination in his eyes. "I'm counting on it. Now let's get to work. Time is of the essence." As the three of them hurried to the hangar, the weight of their decision hung heavy in the air. The battle lines had been drawn, and the fate of Earth now rested on their shoulders. The news of Admiral Rosh's defection spread rapidly through the clandestine resistance network, igniting a new sense of hope and determination among the Earthlings. Sarah and Aisha found themselves at the center of the growing movement, their scientific expertise and strategic vision becoming invaluable assets. "We need to expand the Underground Railroad beyond just smuggling people off-world," Sarah said, her brow furrowed in concentration as she pored over the latest intelligence reports. "The governors are tightening their grip, and we have to be prepared to fight back." Aisha nodded, her expression grim. "Agreed. But we'll need more than just a few brave souls willing to risk everything. We need resources, weapons, and a way to coordinate our efforts across the globe." Sarah's lips quirked into a determined smile. "Well, that's where my little project comes in." She gestured to the holographic display, where schematics for a series of modified starships were projected. "These are old Terran military vessels that we've been refurbishing and upgrading with the latest propulsion and weapons technology." Aisha's eyes widened. "You're turning them into a fleet of resistance fighters." "Exactly." Sarah's expression turned serious. "We've already secured several ships, and we're in the process of recruiting and training a dedicated crew. Once we have them fully operational, we'll be able to not only evacuate people, but also defend against the governor's forces." Aisha let out a low whistle. "That's ambitious, even for you. And what about the government? Surely they won't just stand by and let us build an armed resistance force." Sarah's gaze darkened. "They're hesitant to get involved directly, but they've agreed to look the other way as long as we keep things under the radar." She paused, her eyes meeting Aisha's. "Which is why we need to be extremely careful and selective about who we bring into the fold." Aisha nodded, her expression resolute. "Then let's get to work. The future of Earth depends on it." Governor Greya's scales rippled with barely contained fury as he listened to Vaxon's report. The news of Admiral Rosh's defection had sent shockwaves through the governor's inner circle, and their carefully laid plans were starting to unravel. Unacceptable. Greya slammed his fist on the table, his eyes narrowing to slits. "We can't allow this kind of open challenge to the Empire's authority. We need to put an end to it, immediately." Vaxon raised a placating hand. "I understand your concern, Greya, but rash action could jeopardize everything we've worked for. We need to tread carefully." Greya let out a growl of frustration. "Careful? The longer we wait, the more time those Earthlings have to rally their forces. We need to crush this resistance before it gains any real momentum." Vaxon's expression remained impassive. "And we will, Greya. But we must first identify the extent of the threat and the resources at their disposal. Rushing in blindly will only play into their hands." Greya's scaled brow furrowed. "Then what do you propose we do?" Vaxon's lips curled into a predatory smile. "Deploy our own operatives to infiltrate their network, gather intelligence, and sow discord from within. Once we have a clear picture of their capabilities, we can strike decisively." Greya considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well. But make no mistake, Vaxon. If this plan of yours fails, I'll have your head." Vaxon inclined his head. "It won't fail. I'll see to it personally." As the governors adjourned their meeting, a sense of unease hung in the air. The battle lines had been drawn, and the fate of Earth now hung in the balance. In the dimly lit hangar, Sarah and Aisha stood before a small fleet of refurbished starships, their eyes shining with a mixture of pride and determination. "We finished the final modifications," Sarah said, her voice carrying a newfound confidence. "These ships are now capable of matching the speed and firepower of the Empire's own vessels." Aisha placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder, a rare smile playing on her lips. "You've done an amazing job, Sarah. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've turned these old hulks into a formidable force." Sarah's expression sobered. "It's not enough, Aisha. The governors are going to retaliate, and we need to be ready." She gestured to the ships. "That's why we're expanding our recruitment efforts, bringing in the best pilots, engineers, and strategists we can find. Aisha nodded, her own expression darkening. And what about Admiral Rosh? Has he made any progress with his own evacuation efforts? He has, Sarah replied, her brow furrowing. But the governors are starting to catch on. We need to move quickly if we're going to keep those escape routes open. The two women fell silent, the weight of their responsibilities heavy on their shoulders. They knew that the battle for Earth's freedom was only just beginning, and the stakes had never been higher. The tension in the conference room was palpable as the governors exchanged uneasy glances. Governor Vaxon stepped forward, his expression grave. My fellow governors, I regret to inform you that our efforts to infiltrate the Earthling resistance have met with limited success. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. They have managed to acquire a considerable number of refurbished military vessels, and their network of operatives continues to grow, despite our best efforts to disrupt it. Governor Grea's scales rippled with barely contained fury. Unacceptable. We cannot allow these Earthlings to defy the Empire's authority. We must crush this resistance before it gains any more momentum. Vaxon raised a placating hand. I understand your concern, Grea, but a direct confrontation may not be the wisest course of action. The Earthlings have shown themselves to be resourceful and determined, and we risk incurring the wrath of the Emperor if we engage them openly. Grea's eyes narrowed. Then what do you propose we do, Vaxon? Sit back and watch as they continue to undermine our operations. Vaxon's expression darkened. No, Grea. I believe it's time we take a more decisive approach. He turned to the view screen, where an image of Earth slowly rotated. We will deliver an ultimatum to the Earthling leadership. Surrender to Imperial rule, or face the full might of our military might. The other governors murmured their agreement, the weight of the decision heavy in the air. Grea's scales rippled with a mix of apprehension and anticipation. And if they refuse? Vaxon's lips curled into a grim smile. Then we will have no choice but to destroy them. In the makeshift command center of the resistance, Sarah and Aisha pored over the latest intelligence reports, their expressions grim. The governors have mobilized their forces, Aisha said, her voice taut with tension. Their ships are amassing at the edge of the solar system, and they've issued an ultimatum to the Earthling governments. Sarah's brow furrowed. Surrender or face annihilation. It's a bold gambit, but one that could work if the people lose hope. Aisha nodded, her gaze meeting Sarah's. Then we need to act quickly. We've spent months building our fleet and training our crew, but are they ready for a full-scale confrontation with the Imperial forces? Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line. They'll have to be. We can't afford to lose this fight, Aisha. The future of Earth depends on it. The two women fell silent, the weight of their responsibility heavy on their shoulders. They knew that the coming battle would be the defining moment in their struggle for freedom. In the dimly lit hangar, the resistance fighters gathered, their faces set with steely determination. Admiral Rosh stood before them, his expression grave. The governors have made their move, and the fate of Earth now rests in our hands. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled crew. I know the risks are high, and the odds may seem stacked against us, but I've seen what you're capable of, and I have no doubt that we can prevail. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and Rosh's lips quirked into a faint smile. Good. Then let's get to work. We need to make sure every single one of those ships is ready for battle. He turned to Sarah and Aisha, who stood nearby, their expressions resolute. Are you two ready to lead us into this fight? Sarah and Aisha exchanged a loaded glance, then nodded in unison. We are, Sarah said, her voice steady. This is our chance to take the fight to the governors and show the Empire that Earth will not be cowed. Aisha's expression mirrored Sarah's determination. For too long, we've been on the defensive. Now, it's time to go on the offensive. Rosh's eyes gleamed with a newfound respect. Then let's give them hell. The Resistance fighters cheered, their spirits buoyed by the unwavering resolve of their leaders. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The vast expanse of space crackled with the sound of weapons fire as the Resistance fleet engaged the Imperial vessels. Sarah gripped the arms of her command chair, her knuckles white, as she watched the battle unfold on the main view screen. Helm, evasive maneuvers. We need to keep those capital ships occupied while the strike teams make their runs, she barked, her voice taut with tension. The young pilot's fingers danced across the controls, guiding the heavily modified corvette through a series of complex evasive rolls and turns, narrowly avoiding the devastating beams of the Imperial warships. Copy that, Commander. Striking now. From the flanks of the Resistance formation, a squadron of sleek fighter craft peeled away, their weapons blazing as they targeted the Imperial supply lines and communication relays. Sarah watched with a mixture of pride and apprehension as the plan she and Aisha had meticulously mapped out began to unfold. Status report, she called out, her gaze sweeping across the cramped bridge. Shields holding at 60%, Captain, the tactical officer replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. The strike teams have managed to disrupt several key Imperial systems, but they're taking heavy fire. We won't be able to maintain this position for much longer. Sarah's jaw tightened. Inform the Admiral. Tell him to prepare for the next phase of the operation. Aboard the flagship of the Imperial fleet, Governor Vaxon watched the unfolding battle with a growing sense of unease. The Earthling Resistance had proven far more capable than he had anticipated, and their modified starships were proving to be a formidable challenge for his forces. Increase firepower to the forward batteries, he barked, his scales rippling with agitation. I want those rebel ships destroyed, no matter the cost. The bridge crew scrambled to comply, their fingers flying across their consoles as they relayed the order. Vaxon's gaze narrowed as he focused on the lead corvette, its sleek lines and maneuverability a testament to the Earthlings' ingenuity. So, you think you can outsmart us, do you? He murmured, his lips curling into a predatory smile. We'll see about that. Admiral Roche gripped the edge of the holotable, his eyes fixed on the tactical display as the battle raged around them. The Resistance fighters were holding their own against the Imperial onslaught, but he knew it was a tenuous position at best. Sarah, the strike teams are in position, he said, his voice low and urgent. But we won't be able to maintain this diversion for much longer. We need to make our move, now. Sarah's gaze met his, her expression resolute. Understood, Admiral. Give the order. Roche nodded, his fingers flying across the controls. Within moments, the secondary formation of the Resistance fleet peeled away, their engines glowing with the power of their modified propulsion systems. All ships, follow my lead. Roche's voice boomed across the comm channel. Time to end this. Governor Greya watched with mounting horror as the Imperial flagship shuddered under the relentless barrage of the Resistance fighters. Vaxon's face was a mask of pure fury, his scales pulsing with a dangerous rhythm. What is the meaning of this? Greya snarled, his clawed hands gripping the armrests of his chair. Where are the reinforcements? Vaxon's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed. They're being diverted. Something's gone wrong. As if on cue, the bridge console erupted in a shower of sparks, and Vaxon's face went ashen. Admiral Roche, he hissed, his voice dripping with a mixture of disbelief and dread. That reckless fool. Greya's eyes widened in realization. He's attacking the flagship. We need to get out of here now. Vaxon's lips curled into a snarl. No, we stand and fight. I will not be humiliated by these Earthlings. But as the flagship shuddered under the relentless assault, Greya knew that their defeat was inevitable. The battle for Earth had been decided. Sarah watched with a mix of relief and trepidation as the Imperial flagship erupted in a series of violent explosions, its once mighty form crumbling under the onslaught of the Resistance fighters. Admiral Roche, come in, she called out, her voice laced with concern. What's your status? Static crackled over the comm channel, and for a moment, Sarah's heart sank. Then, a familiar voice, tinged with a hint of static, responded. I'm afraid I won't be making it back, Commander. Rosh's voice was surprisingly calm, despite the gravity of his words. But the rest of you need to get out of here now. The Imperial forces are in full retreat. Sarah's eyes widened, her throat tightening with emotion. Admiral, no, we can't just leave you behind. You must, Sarah. Rosh interrupted, his voice firm. This is the only way to ensure the survival of the Resistance. Promise me you'll continue the fight. For Earth. Sarah swallowed hard, her vision blurring with unshed tears. I promise, Admiral. We won't let your sacrifice be in vain. Rosh's voice softened. I know you won't. Now go. All of you. This is your moment. The comm channel went silent, and Sarah felt a heavy weight settle in her chest. But even as the grief threatened to overwhelm her, a new determination took root. The battle for Earth was not over. It was only just beginning. The streets of Neo-Tokyo were alive with the sound of cheers and celebration as the news of the Resistance's victory spread. Sarah stood on the balcony of the command center, her gaze sweeping across the jubilant crowds, a bittersweet expression on her face. Aisha approached, placing a comforting hand on her friend's shoulder. You did it, Sarah. You and the Resistance have saved Earth from the governor's tyranny. Sarah sighed, her eyes shining with unshed tears. At what cost, Aisha? Admiral Rosh's sacrifice will weigh on me for the rest of my life. Aisha's expression softened. He knew what he was doing, Sarah. He believed in the cause, and he gave his life to ensure our victory. She paused, her grip tightening. We owe it to him to continue the fight, to build the future he envisioned for our planet. Sarah nodded, her jaw set with determination. You're right. Rosh's legacy must live on. She turned to face Aisha, her eyes burning with renewed purpose. So, what's our next move? Aisha's lips quirked into a faint smile. Well, now that the governors have been driven out, we need to start rebuilding. Re-establishing trade, infrastructure, and communication links with the rest of the galaxy. And her expression darkened. We'll need to be vigilant against any lingering Imperial sympathizers who may try to undermine our hard-won freedom. Sarah's brow furrowed. Agreed. We can't let our guard down, not after everything we've been through. The Resistance needs to evolve, to become a stabilizing force for our planet. Aisha nodded. I've already started reaching out to our contacts in the government and the scientific community. They're eager to work with us, to help shape the future of Earth. Sarah's lips curved into a small smile. Then let's get to work. We have a lot of rebuilding to do. In the depths of space, a lone Imperial corvette drifted, its engines barely operational. Governor Greya's scales rippled with a mixture of shame and fury as he stared out at the blackness of the void. Vaxon, you fool, he growled, his clawed hands clenching into fists. If only you had listened to me, we wouldn't be in this predicament. The comm crackled to life, and Vaxon's haggard face appeared on the view screen. Greya, we need to get out of here now. The Earthlings will be scouring the system for any stragglers. Greya's eyes narrowed. And where do you propose we go, Vaxon? Our ships are crippled, our forces decimated. The Emperor will not be pleased. Vaxon's expression darkened. Then we'll have to find a way to make ourselves indispensable. Perhaps there are other opportunities we can exploit in the outer colonies. Greya's lips curled into a humorless smile. Opportunities, you say? Well, I suppose we'd better get started then. The Emperor's wrath is not something I'm eager to incur. The two governors fell silent, their minds already whirring with contingency plans. Though they had been defeated on Earth, they were far from finished. The fight for galactic dominance was still very much on. In the bustling streets of Neo-Tokyo, Sarah and Aisha walked side by side, their expressions a mix of pride and determination. It's been a year since the battle, and Earth is finally starting to rebuild, Aisha said, her gaze sweeping across the thriving cityscape. The Resistance has played a crucial role in re-establishing our connections with the wider galaxy. Sarah nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips, and our scientific advancements have been a major boon. We're no longer dependent on the Empire for technology and resources. Aisha's expression sobered. Yes, but we can't afford to let our guard down. There are still those who would seek to undermine our progress, to drag us back into the Empire's sphere of influence. Sarah's brow furrowed. I know. That's why the Resistance has evolved into a more formal organization, with a dedicated intelligence and security division. She paused, her gaze meeting Aisha's. We won't let anyone take away the freedom we've fought so hard for. Aisha nodded, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. I never doubted you, Sarah. You've become a true leader, both for the Resistance and for our planet. Sarah's expression softened. I couldn't have done it without you, Aisha. Or, her voice faltered slightly, without Admiral Rosh's sacrifice. Aisha reached out, squeezing Sarah's hand. He would be proud of what we've accomplished. Earth is finally free, and the future is ours to shape. The two friends walked on, their steps filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The battle for Earth may have been won, but the fight for its future had only just begun.